In this video, we will be tasting and talking about batch 116 of the Eco Cha Tea Club, a Wenshan Baozhong Tea from Taiwan. Batch 116 of the Eco Cha Tea Club is a Wenshan Baozhong Tea from Taiwan, spring 2025 harvest. It was one of the earliest days of harvest. I believe it was April 8th. Our in-store batch was one of the days of harvest toward the end of the month. This batch was meant to be entered into competition. He somehow got talked out of it by a local merchant who explained to him that the judges will be focusing on Baozhong tea made from Jinshuan Oolong, Jinshuan Taicha number 12, the hybrid strain of tea that is quite popular, particularly at lower elevations, and is becoming more and more common up in the Pinglin area that produces Wenshan Baozhong tea. So he didn't enter it, which was good for us because we got to procure it. There's a time lapse in between the day of harvest and when we can go taste and choose, because it's the line is long for the services that provide sorting and trimming of the leaf material after it's been processed. Virtually all of Wenshan Baozhong tea, or all of the tea in the Pinglin area, except for very small farmers that are kind of in a separate category of boutique tea producer, machine harvest their teas. And another aspect that's different from high mountain tea in the central area, for example, is that they don't do solar withering. They've developed a method called 热风, hot wind withering, which is basically just a big trough with wide, kind of like a square screen with squares, maybe 1 centimeter squares, so the leaves don't fall through them, but there's as much airflow as possible from the bottom. They have big fans with heaters on the perimeter of this big square trough or rectangle, as the case may be, and they're blowing hot air in, and then they're shuffling the leaves in this trough, and they put them quite thick, and that is like a Kickstarter method of the withering process. Just like solar withering, that it's the same idea, but this allows the farmers, they machine harvest so they can go out as soon as the weather gets nice. It's much more volatile up there, much more rainy, so they're able to grab the weather when they can. With machine harvesting, they can take in a lot of tea within a couple hours. And then if the weather changes suddenly, they're not compromised by the solar withering, which also takes hours and hours to do. So it's definitely a suitable method that they've developed for their climate there during harvest season, particularly spring. It rains often and on and off a lot. So after they process the leaves, they bring them to these facilities that are able to scan the leaves using infrared, and they sort by color and also by shape, I believe, or at least the bulkier stem material. And then the whole machine, I'm still a little bit in wonderment on how it works, but they sort the leaves and they trim off the stem material or the older discolored material, and it turns out looking beautiful. You get very uniform. Let's have a quick look at the brewed leaves since we're talking about it already. Really nice, incredibly uniform coloration of the leaves. So that's the one thing about Wenshan Baozhong. There is significant oxidation, but it's subtle and it's like permeates the leaf in a different way due to the processing methods. Another aspect that varies from high mountain oolong tea making is the tumbling is much more delicate and not as long typically. So it's a very more delicate process of withering and oxidation, but that whatever they're able to accomplish, the leaves have this sense of being oxidized throughout in an incredibly uniform way. So it maintains this fresh greenness while mellowing the leaf and not muddling it by having parts of it be oxidized and parts of it be unoxidized, or relatively on both ends, which you can see much more clearly or obviously in the Oolong tea making methods that are used here in central Taiwan. So it's just a beautifully uniform color of green. Very little discoloration anywhere. The stems that are, the bottom of the leaf stem is slightly yellowed, but much less obvious in its oxidation than High Mountain Oolong tea. And it is more lightly oxidized, but what I appreciate the most and continue to be mystified about literally every time I taste it with Baozhong tea is that it's somehow a deeper green, and like it loses that grassy green very effectively. That is more, it's done better than with High Mountain Oolong tea processing methods. And I've expressed this to many of my friends here in the High Mountain Oolong tea country, and they're like, yeah. And the final and most significant aspect of that is that Wenshan Baozhong leaves are not rolled. So they don't have that, they're not compressed, and they're not manipulated as much. And that's how they maintain their structural integrity that maintains their fresh quality. Okay, before we go on to drinking, we'll have a quick look at the dry leaves. Same thing, just a beautifully uniform coloration of the leaves and size. The sorting of the leaves really gives you the cream of the crop. And this was sorted very carefully. You can tell the people that sort the tea, trim the tea, if you want it done more crudely or more refined. And since he was going to enter this into competition, it was done more refined, which means that the B grade or C grade material is all removed and only the A grade remains. So it becomes a more valuable tea by default in that respect. Okay, I really want to sip. Before I do that, 180 milliliter Gaiwan teapot. This is our go-to for green oolongs. We like the way that it doesn't let the leaves kind of smolder in there or get just kind of cooked at all, because we're taking off this wide mouth lid to fill it up. I put 10, so I did 10 grams of dry leaf to 180 milliliters of water. That's a 1:18 ratio. I didn't preheat the pot. I didn't moisten the leaves. Just like with black tea, I just go for it with this curled leaf material, because you don't want to lose that first hit of water onto the leaves. That's the freshest part. But since they needed to reconstitute and the pot needed to heat up, I did 60 seconds on the first brew, boiling temperature water basically, and I brought it down to 40 seconds on the second brew, and then I added 10 seconds per brew. So 60, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 for an overall 6 brews. Thank you. Cooled down now. Yeah, I actually decided on that method I just described, the timing of it. After I did a trial run this morning on my own, I started with 50 seconds, and that first brew wasn't quite opened up enough for me, and I'm glad I adjusted it to 60. Definite floral notes, fresh herbal notes. My sinuses are already kind of like, I don't know, tingling out to my ears. Literally, I'm getting a bit of goosebumps. That's the weird thing that happens to a tea head when they taste a very tasty tea. Yeah, so there's a lot of flavor in here, wow. And again, along with the floral high notes and the fresh herbal notes, there's this deep green quality, like a foresty green, that comes with that uniform oxidation that I think is what puts Wenshan Baozhong in the category that it is on its own, really distinct from the oolong teas that are made all throughout the rest of Taiwan, particularly a lightly oxidized unroasted tea like Wenshan Baozhong is. This is a historical tea. It goes back to the 1800s. And it was one of the first teas to be exported to the West, Europe and America. You can read the history if you read up on John Dodd, D-O-D-D. And you can find packaging, photos of packaging, and it says Baozhong Tea on it. Sometimes it just says Oolong. So I think they were using Oolong to designate, like we do on the market today, a partially oxidized tea, anything between green tea and black tea. Second brew. It's nice to drink it cooled down, a lot more flavor coming through. When it's hot and volatile, it's all in the nose, but there's so much more in the palate that I'm getting now that it's almost room temperature. Something savory, but fresh herbs, not dried herbs. It's very alive. It's definitely changing in flavor. It's interesting. Whoa. Okay, the contrast between going from 4 back to 1, one was definitely more this kind of distinct, I got an arugula note in the first, like it's something, when you do this really close to side by side, back to back thing, you get these differences much more prominently. Yeah, it's got that spicy little bit of mustard green arugula thing going, and that's getting lighter as we go. I think it becomes more floral as the brew gets a little bit lighter. I certainly wouldn't say it's going flat, but it's just changing more significantly than most teas in my experience. Yeah, it might be interesting to experiment with a little more leaf material. I went with 1 to 18, which is less than our standard 1 to 15 for light, green oolongs, high mountain teas. One reason is because it's curled leaf tea. I wanted to treat it more delicately, and I also didn't want to do that too concentrated, muted thing that happens. You put too many leaves in the pot, and you get a strong cup of tea, surprise, but you don't get those subtle high notes as easily. Well, basically you kind of compromise them. I've put that to the test many times. So what we can try is putting more leaf material in, but brewing it much less, like maybe starting at 40 and going down to 25 or 30, letting it steep for short intervals, and then it might be a little more even overall. But I kind of like the spectrum that I'm getting here. I'm gonna run through it one more time. Now arugula is stuck in my head. Less already on the second brew. Floral. Wow, this is fun. Really is changing a lot. Yeah, I'm just getting, like, from here on out, it's like floral and light and a little bit thinner on the palate. I think it peaked at 3 and 4. I feel like it's getting a little weaker on 5. Still nice though, it's yummy. This was the last of that, so I don't need to do that, but here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can see how delicate it is. It's really, almost, it's not transparent, but obviously there's color there, but I can see right through this glass to the other side clearly. I'd say greener than golden, so that's where Wenshan Baozhong maintains that green freshness more than a lightly oxidized oolong tea. Okay, competition grade Wenshan Baozhong Spring 2025. Early in the harvest, the first few days, or within the first week for sure, and treated with the best care and preparation for competition, but he didn't put it in competition, so we got it. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you next month.